You know, um, hosting a formal dinner party is like largely about logistics,
Right,
right?
absolutely.
You manage the timing of the courses, you curate a playlist, you subtly direct the flow of conversation. It has its known rhythm to it.
Yeah.
But hosting a game night,
That's a whole different beast.
right, it requires an entirely different set of um, sociological muscles. You are taking a group of people, placing them in this artificial environment with like an arbitrary set of constraints and asking them to navigate competition and cooperation in real time.
Right.
It is a uniquely precarious ecosystem.
It genuinely is because, well, you're dealing with asymmetrical expectations.
Yeah.
The social contract of a game night relies on everyone agreeing to care deeply about a manufactured conflict for a specific duration of time. But everyone brings different energy levels,
That's true.
different tolerances for cognitive strain, different competitive thresholds, all to the exact same table.
Which perfectly frames the scenario we're tackling in the deep dive today.
Yeah.
We're looking directly at you, the listener. Picture your own living room. You are planning a game night in 2026, and your objective is not just to, like, kill a few hours.
Oh,
You
yeah.
want this event to be a massive, undeniable success. You're looking for that elusive magic where people are leaning over the table, groaning over a blocked move, cheering a ridiculous victory.
The holy grail of game nights.
Exactly. And before they even walk out the door, they're asking when you're hosting the next one.
To map out the architecture of that perfect night, we're pulling our framework today from the 2026 Board Game Selection Guide.
Yeah, this is a great source.
It really is. We've spent time analyzing the insights from both the homepage and the deeper context pages of Picks by Game. That's at picksbygame.com.
And right out of the gate, the guide identifies this central, almost universal friction point, the mixed experience group.
Yeah, the classic problem.
Right. You look around your table and you have one friend who inherently grasps like probability and engine building mechanics, sitting right next to another friend whose primary gaming experience involves highly unstructured social deduction.
Right, like party games.
Exactly. And you have to capture the attention of both of them simultaneously. And you need a game with such high replayability that this specific configuration of humans actually wants to return to it next month.
That is the ultimate needle to thread in modern tabletop gaming.
Yeah.
The Picks by Game Guide approaches this dilemma by establishing a definitive analytical framework. They essentially divide the modern tabletop landscape into two distinct hemispheres.
Okay.
You've got your lighter games and your deeper games. And navigating the space between those two hemispheres and understanding the psychological load each demands is basically the secret to curating a successful group dynamic.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even debate the merits of a lighter versus a deeper experience, we need to define what the guide means when it talks about buying your first real board game.
Yeah, real is a loaded word there.
It is. The phrase itself implies a contrast. It implies that we're actively running away from the ghosts of game nights past.
Yeah,
You know, those dusty, fading boxes sitting in the back of everyone's childhood closets.
right. We are contrasting modern design philosophy with those older mass-market cultural touchstones.
The ones that just ruin friendships.
Exactly. Because those older games often relied entirely on output randomness. You roll a die, the die dictates your movement, and the board dictates your fate.
You're just along for the ride.
Right. Your actual agency or ability to make a meaningful strategic choice is effectively zero. Or, you encounter mechanisms like early player elimination,
Oh, the worst.
where a single bad roll means you spend the next 2 hours scrolling on your phone while the rest of the table actually finishes the campaign.
So a real modern board game essentially strips out those archaic flaws.
Yeah.
It prioritizes continuous engagement and ensures that your decisions, rather than just like a piece of plastic tumbling on the table, drive the outcome. But within that modern renaissance, we run into the framework you mentioned, that great divide between the light and the deep.
Which brings us back to the listener's dilemma. To successfully handle a mixed experience group, the guide directs us first to the lighter hemisphere.
Okay.
The two premier titles they highlight as masterful case studies in this space are Azul and Codenames.
I have to push back here for a second, though.
Oh, okay, go for it.
When we use a term like lighter, it carries a certain amount of cultural baggage, doesn't it? Like, are lighter games simply code for easy or disposable? Let me try an analogy here. Are games like Azul and Codenames essentially the pop music of board games?
The pop music.
Yeah. Because, like a pop song has a catchy hook, it's universally accessible, it gets the party started, but critics often argue it lacks complex substance. Are we just serving our friends an empty caloric appetizer?
What's fascinating here is how entirely wrong that assumption is, and the guide's analysis specifically disproves it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is very easy to conflate a streamlined rule set with a simplistic game, but structurally, they are entirely different beasts. The brilliance of Azul and Codenames isn't simply that they're approachable, it's that their mechanics generate immense, almost fractal replayability,
Huh.
if we use your pop music analogy.
Yeah, let's think of that.
A truly timeless pop song is actually incredibly complex in its chord progressions and production to make it sound that effortless.
That's true, yeah.
These games accomplish the exact same feat through game theory.
Okay, let's break down how that invisible complexity operates in Azul then.
Sure.
For those familiar with the game, you know that the premise is visually charming, but mechanically deceptive. You're drafting colorful tiles to build a mosaic. The turn structure is incredibly brief.
Right, very snappy.
Yeah, you take tiles of one color from a central factory display, and the leftovers are pushed into a communal center pool.
On the surface, it appears to be a solitary puzzle, you know. A novice player will engage with Azul purely on the level of efficiency, simply trying to fill their own player board to score positive points.
Right, just focusing on their own little mosaic.
Exactly. But the open information nature of the game means the real complexity exists in the negative space.
What do you mean by negative space here?
Well, every time you draft a tile, you are actively altering the mathematical probabilities and the available resources for the person sitting right next to you.
Oh, which creates a beautifully toxic economy as the round progresses.
Yes. Happy.
Because eventually, that communal center pool fills up with an enormous stack of, say, black tiles. And you look across the table and realize your veteran gamer friend has absolutely no room on their board for black tiles.
They're completely blocked.
Right. So you intentionally draft the only safe option last, forcing them to take that massive pile of black tiles.
And because they cannot legally place them, those tiles shatter on their floor, mathematically devastating their score.
It's so brutal.
It is. And that is the genius of a perfectly designed later game. The rule book doesn't force you to attack your friends.
Yeah, there's no combat mechanics.
Right, the game itself doesn't feature combat. The complexity emerges entirely from human psychology and resource denial. You are playing the players, not the mechanics.
That makes perfect sense for an open information game like Azul, where you can, calculate your opponent's downfall.
Yeah.
But Codenames operates on a completely different axis of interaction.
Very different, yeah.
It's a game of hidden information and linguistic association. You have a grid of words, a team captain giving a one-word clue, and a number indicating how many words connect to that clue.
It replaces mathematical tension with semantic tension.
Ooh, I like that phrasing.
Yeah, the brilliance here is the burden placed on the clue giver. They're looking at this grid, trying to find the intersecting mental Venn diagram of their teammates.
It's terrifying.
It really is. If the clue is apple, they are desperately hoping their team connects it to Newton and pi without accidentally selecting the opponent's word, which might be computer.
I have watched people physically sweat while giving a clue in Codenames.
Oh, absolutely.
The silence in the room becomes deafening. But what strikes me is how this perfectly bridges that mixed experience gap the guide talks about.
How so?
Because the veteran gamer, the one who wants deep strategic optimization,
Yeah.
they can pour all of their cognitive energy into finding the absolute perfect, risk-mitigated clue that connects four wildly disparate words. They're playing a high-stakes puzzle.
Right.
Meanwhile, the novice gamer is just enjoying the social deduction, laughing and arguing with their teammates about whether the word bark means a dog or a tree. Everyone is playing the same game, but engaging with the mechanics at whatever depth they find most comfortable.
That is the defining hallmark of the lighter game category. It provides a highly accessible floor for entry, ensuring no one feels lost during the rules explanation.
Yeah, you can teach it in minutes.
Exactly. But it maintains a surprisingly high ceiling for mastery, ensuring the veteran players remain fully invested.
Okay, so that sounds like a flawless solution. If lighter games are universally appealing, generate these incredible psychological interactions, and perfectly solve the problem of the mixed experience group, why would our listener ever need to look at another category? If we have the perfect tool, why does the guide spend half its word count exploring the deeper hemisphere?
Because a closed mechanical loop eventually reveals its boundaries.
Okay.
Once a dedicated group learns the drafting probabilities in Azul or, exhausts the linguistic surprises and code names, they inevitably begin to crave a broader canvas.
They want more.
Right, they want their decisions to have compounding long-term consequences rather than just resetting at the end of a quick round. The guide recognizes that gaming groups evolve, and as they do, their appetite for systemic complexity grows.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the guide doesn't just gently wade into the deep end, it throws us directly into the heavy waters.
Oh yeah, it goes right for the heavy hitters.
The titles they spotlight as the titans of the deeper category are Wingspan and Terraforming Mars. These aren't just games, they are massive logistical commitments.
They represent a fundamental paradigm shift in what a board game expects from its players. The guide is incredibly transparent about the inherent risks involved in bringing these boxes to the table.
Let me ask you a very practical question then. If bringing out a game with hundreds of cards and resource cubes risks completely alienating the novice players we just spent all this time carefully catering to,
Right.
what is the actual payoff? Why would our listener risk shattering the delicate social harmony of their game night?
The payoff is the depth of the narrative arc and the feeling of intellectual ownership.
Intellectual ownership.
Yeah, because deeper games demand a significantly higher upfront cognitive investment. They ask you to hold a long-term strategic vision in your head while constantly adapting to short-term tactical setbacks.
It's like having a second job.
It kind of is. But the reward for that mental labor is a feeling of engineered progression that a lighter game simply cannot simulate.
To make that concrete, let's examine Wingspan.
Okay.
Thematically, it's incredibly soothing. You are bird enthusiasts, playing bird cards into different habitats on your player board. The artwork is beautiful, the components are tactile and inviting.
Very welcoming presentation.
Right. But mechanically, it is a relentless, mathematically rigorous engine builder.
The concept of the engine is crucial here. In a lighter game, a turn is usually an isolated event. You take an action, you get a result.
Yeah.
In Wingspan, your turns physically compound. You are building an action economy.
Walk us through that.
So the bird you play into your forest habitat on turn 1 generates food. That food allows you to play a bird into your grassland habitat on turn 2, which generates eggs.
Okay.
Those eggs allow you to play a bird into your wetland habitat on turn 3, which allows you to draw more cards.
You are literally assembling a machine out of cardboard.
Yeah.
And the psychological feedback loop, like that dopamine hit when you finally activate the engine you spent an hour building.
The best.
And it triggers a chain reaction of 4 different abilities in perfect sequence.
Yeah.
It's profoundly satisfying. You don't just feel lucky, you feel genuinely clever.
You feel like an architect. And if Wingspan is building a finely tuned machine, Terraforming Mars is trying to orchestrate an industrial revolution.
Good Lord.
It scales that feeling of progression up to an interplanetary generational level.
Terraforming Mars is the epitome of heavy cognitive load. It's essentially like trying to day trade stocks while simultaneously planting a community garden.
That is a scarily accurate description.
Right, you're managing 6 different fluctuating resource economies. Money, steel, titanium, plants, energy, and heat.
It's a lot.
You're analyzing a massive deck of project cards, each with unique scientific prerequisites. And you're doing all of this while competing for physical territory on a map of the Martian surface.
It asks the player to balance immediate survival with massive deferred payoffs. A mistake you make in your resource production during the first 30 minutes of the game might mathematically doom your corporate expansion 2 hours later. Yeah, it is a masterpiece of interlocking systems.
But, and here's the big but, if I bring Terraforming Mars to my living room and sit it in front of my friend who considers Azul to be a brain burner,
Oh no.
they aren't just going to be confused, they're going to feel actively demoralized. The social contract of the game night will completely fracture.
Which is exactly the tension the 2026 selection guide warns about. These deeper games are mechanically robust, but socially fragile.
Socially fragile. Yeah.
If one person at the table fundamentally misunderstands their action economy or simply checks out because the mental math is too exhausting,
The basing dies.
the pacing of the entire game collapses, the experience drags, and suddenly no one is having fun.
We have mapped out a massive, intimidating spectrum today. On one end, the elegant, vicious accessibility of the lighter games. On the other end, the sprawling, strategically rich, but heavily demanding deeper games.
Yep, quite the contrast.
You, our listener, are sitting there trying to plan this specific night. You have your mixed experience group. You want them leaning over the table, not staring blankly at rulebooks.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the guide's ultimate thesis is that choosing a board game is not a mechanical decision, it is a sociological assessment.
I love that.
You aren't just evaluating the cardboard in the box. You are evaluating the collective attention span of your living room on that specific Friday night. You have to gauge their tolerance for frustration, their willingness to learn, and their current energy levels.
So what does this all mean? Our listener is standing in the aisle of their local game store right now, or, hovering over the checkout button online.
Right.
They have the picks by game framework in their head. They have to make a definitive choice for their first real board game purchase to guarantee this upcoming night is a success.
Ugh.
What is the absolute final verdict?
Synthesizing the guide's explicit focus on mixed experience groups and the necessity for high replayability, the top recommendation is unambiguous. Your first acquisition must be a lighter game. You start your journey with Azul or Codenames.
That feels entirely correct. You simply cannot ask people to sprint before they understand how to tie their shoes.
Exactly.
If your primary objective is to ensure your friends actually want to come back for a second game night, you have to prioritize the hook. You have to prove to your casual non-gamer friends that this modern tabletop renaissance is fundamentally about interactive fun, not about tedious spreadsheets and solitary math.
The lighter games serve as the perfect ambassadors to the hobby. They are tools for building social capital. When you pull out Azul, teach the rules in 4 minutes, and within 10 minutes the entire table is laughing, scheming, and actively trying to ruin each other's mosaics. You establish a baseline of trust.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You prove that your game nights are a safe, engaging environment where the cognitive load is manageable.
And once you have established that trust, you can begin to slowly push the boundaries, right?
Precisely.
Once Codenames has them comfortably navigating shared mechanics, you can introduce a game with slightly more asymmetrical player powers. You use the lighter games to forge the group dynamic. Over time, that group might organically develop an appetite for engine building, and suddenly they're asking to play Wingspan.
It is crucial to remember that the games themselves, the wooden meeples, the beautiful artwork, the intricate rule books, are ultimately just delivery mechanisms for human connection.
Wow, yeah.
Understanding the friction between accessibility and complexity and respecting the energy of the people at your table guarantees that your game night will be memorable. You are curating an experience, prioritizing the players over the mechanics.
That active curation is what keeps the evening flowing smoothly. It is the difference between a group of people staring at their phones in silence and a group of people aggressively demanding a rematch at midnight.
However, manipulating group dynamics often yields unintended consequences.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to ponder as you prepare for your upcoming game night. Let's say you take this advice to heart. You buy a brilliant, highly replayable lighter game. You bring it to the table and it works perfectly. You successfully hook your casual, mixed experience friends. They come back next week and the week after that.
You have effectively engineered a dedicated tabletop gaming group out of thin air.
But what happens when they inevitably master the shallow end of the pool? What happens when this casual group of friends starts glancing at the heavier boxes on your shelf?
Right.
When they start actively craving the intense, multi-hour cognitive depth of terraforming Mars?
It introduces a fascinating paradox of hospitality.
Does successfully introducing your friends to real board games ultimately destroy the casual, laid-back game night you originally set out to create? Do you end up building a group that eventually demands to play a 4-hour, brain-burning symphony every single time they step into your living room?
A delicate, evolving ecosystem.
Something to think about while you're managing that toxic center pool of tiles. Good luck with the game night, and we will see you deep in the cardboard trenches next time.